Jackson Hole, Wyoming. When you arrive, it looks a bit like Switzerland. Grand Teton National Park is here, not far from Yellowstone with its wildlife and scenery. Snowboarding and skiing in Jackson Hole, part of what makes it one of the most beautiful tourist destinations on Earth. Around Jackson, Wyoming, the main town here, are America's mega-rich, who have mega estates for weekend homes, some living here year-round. And then there are the many working-class residents here, among the town's 10,000 people, considered the backbone of the economy in Jackson. Many living in pretty bleak housing conditions because they say they cannot afford a decent place to live. An affordable place to them on their pay is about $800 to $1,000 a month. Longtime Jackson resident Brandy Bortz, a waitress, says rentals are usually much higher than $1,000 a month.
2-bedroom for $4,500, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, $7,000.
Brandy's known for her unique right-hand drive van that she bought on the cheap a few years back during COVID that has a backup bed in the back for the times she says she's found herself having to move when her rent was doubled or tripled in price. People being forced to move in Jackson, some of them on the streets, from skyrocketing rents has become the norm. And if you think you've moved a lot during your lifetime, wait till you hear how many times Brandy has moved since she's been here.
So I moved here to Jackson in 1996, and I will be moving for the 46th time. I did live in this place over here on the left. That was one place. Lived in this house right here. Oh, I lived here. I lived here on the left. One of these. I lived in this one. Lived over there on the left. Over here. I lived in this gray-blue building. It's my 42nd place was where this hole is.
Her apartment here that was torn down was only $500 a month, though she says it was heavily contaminated with mold that began making her ill after 5 years living here.
Over the course of 5 years, I started having health problems. Then I started losing the feeling in my hands and my feet, and I couldn't remember simple things. And it was mold. It was the mold that was making me very sick.
Her apartment building today being replaced by high-end condos for sale.
You know, they're building $1 million condos, which I cannot afford.
Buying a home here in Jackson, she says, is not even remotely an option. The median home price in Jackson is $3.5 million, 7 times the median home value in the United States. And astonishingly, many of these homes, according to recent data, have no one living in them most of the year because many of them are vacation homes or second and third homes for the wealthy living out of state.
61% of the homes here in Jackson aren't lived in. It could be more than that now because there's a lot of people that have second and third homes. There's no state tax. They claim this as their residence, so a lot of these homes aren't lived in, which is really sad.
There is a disturbing shortage of affordable housing across the United States, according to the National Low-Income Housing Initiative, estimating some 7.5 million people are in need of affordable housing that just isn't available. Nearly a quarter of all renters spend more than 50% of their income now on rent. And many have been evicted for not being able to keep up with paying that rent. $1.5 million people are evicted each year in the United States. Evictions said to be increasing with the pandemic over. Many of those evicted working immigrant families. Here in Jackson in 2016, these apartments were sold and converted into private condos for sale. Hundreds of immigrants who were living here were evicted en masse. One of them, 11-year-old Ventura Garcia, who goes by Benny, making the news with the sign he wrote saying he loves his country and community and is proud to be part of a poor family, but is sad his family now has no place to live. And this is Benny today, returning here for the first time since the evictions, with his mom, Noemi, and young brother, Dominic.
A lot of families just instantly gone like that. That community of kids and people who all came from similar backgrounds just gone in an instant.
He says the day of the eviction, trash dumpsters here were piled high with everyone's personal belongings because the eviction came so suddenly, many had no time to find another place to live.
Those trash cans were filled with just, all sorts of furniture, sorts of, chairs, books, toys. It really just showed you the death of a community.
Benny's mom, Noemi, despite the eviction, raised Benny to become a top student in school here in Jackson. All the while having to live with friends and family because she couldn't afford housing on her meager salary working in a local supermarket. Jackson's government leaders created an affordable housing program for families like Noemi's to be able to afford to buy an affordable home. So Noemi assumed they would offer her a home she could afford. On her salary, she can afford a home that costs no more than $200,000. She says she was stunned when she heard the price of the so-called affordable home the town had offered. It wasn't $200,000. It was more than double that.
It was more than $500,000. So for me, honestly, it was not affordable at all.
500,000, that amount of money is it's something that still isn't affordable in reality.
$500,000 is what you'd have to pay for affordable housing. That's what they told you with a straight face?
Yes. And I couldn't believe it, really.
So Noemi says she's renting low-income housing again. Asked why she doesn't move somewhere else.
For me, I just feel like in this town, my kids, they can walk outside and I don't need to worry. There is no crime outside. Nothing's gonna happen. It's very safe. So it's very hard as a parent to leave this town because of that reason. It's very safe.
Benny has earned a full scholarship to Amherst College, a private liberal arts school in Massachusetts. His goal, he says, to one day be elected to the Jackson Township Board of Trustees.
Hopefully starting at that board and moving my way on to maybe some governor or, well, one can only dream, some higher position where I can help not just those in this community, but help those that are struggling across the country.
Jackson's town leaders recognize there is a huge housing shortage here, says Jackson's Vice Mayor Arne Jorgensen, who says the challenge is finding land to build on that's not federally owned and protected, and convincing Jackson's wealthier residents to part with some of their land and provide funding toward building homes that are truly affordable for the town's working class.
My housing story is frankly one of privilege, so I have not been in that situation. And you think through, I think in any governing body, representing the voices of those that are generally unrepresented, we need to do better in that context. This is something across the country.
There are some longtime wealthy Jackson residents here who are not so sympathetic toward those struggling to find affordable housing. Jorgensen says some of their comments he's heard are pretty direct.
Why should I help them? I did it on my own. When I came here, no one helped me. And that's real. That's absolutely, I respect that.
As far as homelessness in Jackson, officials say on average there are about 80 people experiencing homelessness here at any given time. Pretty low numbers, they say, compared to other cities in the U.S. However, not included in these numbers are people like Deb Downey. She works as a room attendant or maid at a high-end hotel here in Jackson, making more than minimum wage at $18 an hour, but it's still not enough, she says, for housing in Jackson. She pulls into this parking garage next to the hotel each night to sleep in her SUV, next to several other people sleeping in their vehicles, which police have told her is considered camping illegally.
Town of Jackson don't allow camping. But they allow all these RVs to come in and campers during the summer.
Deb finally found a room at this homeless mission where she and many others pay $420 a month not to have to live on the streets. That's Deb's story. Deb, she is a room attendant in a upper scale hotel here in town.
Mm-hmm.
Makes $18 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
The other night was asked to leave a parking garage that she was sleeping in her SUV. That's what she told me.
We have a challenge. We have a situation where people like that. And she's real, and she's representing part of the challenge. And as a community, we need to do better about addressing those needs.
New construction has been approved by the town, he says, that will provide dozens of new low-income rental units for those in need.
We are starting construction of a 48-unit low-income tax credit funded project, rental project. So that's very much focused on people at the lower end of the earning scale.
Longtime Jackson resident Ren Fialka runs a nationally known advocacy and outreach nonprofit that provides essential supplies and support for people experiencing homelessness across the United States, particularly here in Jackson.
And when we do that, then we can work better for better solutions.
Her organization is called the Spread the Love Commission, that she founded in 2014. Ren has also experienced housing insecurity throughout the majority of her life.
And I had a fairly stable childhood. I only moved like 3 times until I was 16. But then after that, in total in my life, I've moved like 76 times or something at this point.
76 times?
76 times. And then 54 in Jackson. Yeah, yes.
Ren says the biggest challenge for solving the lack of affordable housing and the homeless crisis in America is getting those who are more fortunate to pay attention to families being evicted every day in America, who are some of the 1 million homeless people on the streets of the United States, who she says have no voice.
I want people that are experiencing homelessness to have their voice back, for people to look at them like the human beings they are. I want people who are housed to take even 5 minutes to look at people that are homeless differently. To learn, to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, just some time, and to open their hearts and minds. To reevaluate how they're looking at people that are homeless, and how our community and how our society looks at them. Because until we do that, we're not gonna be able to come together in any kind of compassionate or sustainable way to solve this problem. And until we do, it's just really, really soul-crushing to think that our country is okay with what's going on. It's a homegrown humanitarian crisis, and we don't look at it that way.
Brandy Bortz says the town of Jackson can no longer settle for being a getaway for the rich and ignoring those less fortunate.
A lot of the hardships like to be swept under the rug because, it's such a beautiful, wealthy place.
And she says it's insulting that some of the wealthier residents here seemingly look upon workers wanting affordable housing as beggars.
I wouldn't call myself a beggar. I'd just say I have the right to have affordable, comfortable, safe living.
Benny Garcia Perez says his visit here today, where he was evicted as a child, is a painful one.
It just came so sudden. There wasn't really any warning. There wasn't any sort of consideration for where we would go or where would other families go. So many other children. And sometimes I wonder what happened to them. Sometimes we ignore the reality. We ignore the fact that, it's still happening. It may look different, but that doesn't change the fact that it exists and that it is harming your community. It is harming the people who you call neighbors and the people who make up your community and who help support your community. So ultimately, I would just hope to see more understanding, being more open-minded, and a willingness to also be a part of this community and help it. Thank you.
And find a way to make sure you're being part of the solution, even if it just means to say hello to somebody and give them a smile. Even if that's all you can afford to do, it's something.